I am just trying to I had a good long weekend and I'm
Yeah,
trying to fly off to I'm thinking to Perth tomorrow morning
yeah,
and then come back on Tuesday. I know it's a stupid thing, but I'm trying to do that to see the
yeah,
family. And
right.
then after that, I got a conference in Thailand in Bangkok and
Right.
on Wednesday, Thursday, sorry. So that's kind
Okay.
of sums up my schedule. Hey, Prof, I
Yeah.
want this to be as candid as we can probably have it, and I want to speak on a few talking points that I built up, and I hope it's good enough for you. And I know you might be a bit. I won't get too testy. Don't worry.
No, I don't mind that. I'm just wondering about the background noises. We have sirens and drilling in the construction next door. I'm just wondering whether it's closed my outside windows. So if you just give me a
Yeah,
minute,
yeah, of
I'm
course, yeah.
just gonna, yeah, I have to close them by going outside because it's too
Mm.
difficult to do it.
As long as your clothes on, it's okay.
Oh, for a second. Okay, and let's hope that the Wi-Fi keeps working.
Yes, I'm
Because
sure. I'm sure it will. All right, you ready, Prof?
yes,
One, two, three. Welcome everyone to 84 Musings podcast. I'm again another wonderful guest I could put on is Professor Kanti Bajpai. I'll leave Prof to I should tell you not I'd be very let me introduce Prof for a while. Prof has not only been a personal friend of mine, but also a wonderful human being who's also been a light. He was a vice dean of Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. Written a couple of books as well. And I will leave Prof to introduce himself. And Professor Kanti, the floor is yours for the next 2 minutes.
well, thanks very much, Rakesh, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm Kanti Bajpai. I taught at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in NUS for 14 years and a bit. You're right, I was vice dean a couple of times, so I did 5 or 6 years of vice deanship. But in the main, I taught, and of course, I wrote. I did research, and I wrote books and articles. I'm now back in India, in New Delhi, where I teach at a new private liberal arts university called Ashoka University. It's actually just outside Delhi. And I'm very grateful to NUS for having made me an emeritus professor of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, which means that my name's up there in the faculty. I don't
Yeah.
teach. I'm not day-to-day associated with what goes on there, but they've been very kind. And I retain my email. I get a free parking spot if it's available,
Yeah.
and I can get into NUS's Natural History Museum for free. So no,
Prof,
but
yeah.
the best thing is I think I still have access to NUS's library resources, which are vital for my research.
Mm. Prof, I gotta just do a little icebreaker so that the rest of our listening community can understand. Prof, you work with teenagers, with kids, with potentially politicians and everybody. Tell me honestly, who's harder to handle, Prof? The kids or the politicians?
Well, I should say that I've been a professor most of my life, but I was also headmaster of my old school, which is
Yep.
a boarding school
Doon.
in
Yeah.
India.
Yeah.
Those 6 years at the Doon School,
Hmm.
they're very challenging. I mean, it's a tremendously rewarding experience, but it's also the most challenging educational experience, primarily because, well, in a boarding school, it's 24/7.
Yep.
So there's always stuff happening. But beyond that, it's dealing with kids between the age of 11 and 18, when very formative years, quite challenging years for children as well. And of course, at a school level, as an educator, you're constantly also in touch with and dealing with parents, which is something you don't really deal with at the university level, which is more my
Hmm.
level. So I
Yep.
would say, I mean, the university level is relatively easy compared to particularly middle school, high school
Mm.
education.
I wanted to. This is a great segue. I wanted to actually talk to you more about your experience at Doon. Because there's something that I think the Doon School, I think it's called, where you are a teacher and a headmaster as well. I wanted to just expand upon this whole thing. Like, how did that shape you? journey through education or being an educator or being someone, a facilitator through education. How did that start, Prof? Like, how do you go through that journey initially?
Well, I mean, of course, I've been a professor, so this came in mid-career
Correct. Yeah.
when my school called on me to
Mm-hmm.
return as headmaster. And having been an old student of the school as well, and having done a short teaching stint as a young man there, I mean, I was quite clued into its tradition, its practices, its culture, and so on. But of course, school education was pretty new to me, in the sense that I'd only been exposed to it for a year as a young man, as a young teacher. Um, I went because I thought that school education in India was undergoing a lot of change, primarily in those days at the curricular level. India
Mm-hmm.
was moving from a relatively liberal political dispensation
Correct. Yeah.
to a more conservative dispensation, informed by India's older culture, perhaps even its ancient culture, its classics, a bit more informed by Hinduism. So inevitably this meant curricular change. And I was quite intrigued by how schools in general would, after 50, 60 years of kind of liberal secular humanism,
Mm-hmm.
move over, as it were, to Hindu humanism, if I could call it that. And there were challenges I could see, already at the university level, because after all, at the university, we were getting young students from high schools in the language program at Jawaharlal Nehru University, where I taught. So, the that change from liberal secularism to a different form of humanism was already beginning to have an impact on the mindset of students and even faculty at the
Yeah, but
university
did it
level.
did
So
it did it have a direct impact on the curriculum that was being taught?
I mean, it was beginning to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it was wholesale. I think it's advanced beyond what I encountered back when I was headmaster of the school, which
Mm-hmm.
was now, gosh, I left in 2009, so it's been 16 years
Prof,
since
just
I've been.
a quick interruption. Is Doon School considered like an elite school, or I didn't do a bit of a
I mean,
for
it,
the
it, it,
for our
it depends
listeners?
on,
Yeah.
yeah, it depends on what you mean by elite. Because a lot of the students are on scholarship and financial aid, it isn't elite necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
financially speaking. But of course, the students are largely from second and first tier towns.
Yeah.
They come from backgrounds where they're pretty fluent in English. They've been exposed to a lot of Western values and ways. So in
Mm-hmm.
India, that means elite.
Yeah.
Um, they come from so-called pakka houses, well-built up houses and so
Mm-hmm.
on. They're not coming from villages and from really poor backgrounds and
Mm-hmm.
deprived backgrounds. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, the elite, and it's a very small student body, just 500 students.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but to go back to the
Yeah, let's
issue
go
of
back. Yeah,
why,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, to why I went there, was more intrigued by the curricular issue. How would we as educationists begin to encounter that change, and what did it mean? Of course, there were personal reasons. It's fabulous to go back to your old school, to head it, and so on. And I wanted to move my children away from metropolitan centers to a third tier
Yeah. Yeah.
town. But those are personal reasons. But the larger reason was what's happening in education. This was the early 2000s, and to try and see, what I could do to help my school mediate and adjust to those changes.
Mm. But then let's fall back to what we were discussing earlier about the change of syllabus or the change of potential change of syllabus. But we talk about more of a context of what you teach. Has that changed a lot, Prof? Like from where you were started out from to where you are today?
Well, I don't deal with school education now, but from what I see being
Yeah.
discussed in the media, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
certainly the curriculum has changed quite a bit in the social sciences, in the humanities, where the impact of a cultural change is felt most.
Mm.
Cultural change doesn't impact science as much. I mean, the
Yeah,
basic
your
laws of
STEM
physics,
can change, but
do stay. But in history, in the languages, in your interpretation of your past, in the social sciences,
yeah.
there, cultural values begin to play more. So definitely, I think there's been a change, and there are debates raging in India over those changes, whether they're appropriate or not.
Yeah, but scholastically, in your position, Prof, is there an impact? Like, is there a change at the professor level or even a dean for a school. Like
Mm.
I've seen the stories that's happening in the U.S. right with Harvard with Brown paying out so and so and even the Wharton UPenn. Do you think the revisionism of what we are teaching our kids today has some kind of impact on the reality of what actually happened? And I find this personally because I am both alumni of Brown and Wharton, so it's kind of funny when I see like we're paying off the presidency to find a
Yeah.
different narrative of what is supposed to be, because they say we're
Okay.
too
You
liberal,
jumped,
so uni.
you jumped me. Okay, you jumped me to university education here. I was
Yeah, of
talking
course,
about school education.
yeah,
Yeah, but at the
scholastically, yeah,
university level,
yeah,
I think at the university level, the impact's been somewhat less, just because university level is not where governments really feel they can have the greatest impact.
hmm
Uh, Schools all across the country are governed by two or three examination boards, all of which have to take into account the Ministry of Education's guidelines on curriculum and so on. So,
hmm
it's far easier to change the curriculum by dealing with two or three national boards, and then each state has its own education board, what
right,
you would
yeah,
think of as provinces. But that's easier than hundreds and hundreds of universities and their own curriculum and so on. So, and I think on the whole, uh, governments have thought that the universities can be given more room. And so, the impact hasn't been as great. However, I think it's clear that in terms of student activism or faculty activism, there's certainly a change. When I taught at a left-leaning university in Delhi, JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru
mm,
University, in the 90s, it was wide open. I mean, the campuses were, very lively in terms of all kinds of discourse and protests
yeah,
and so on.
mm,
That has certainly changed over the last 10 years or so because the central government in particular has taken a view that the university shouldn't be political,
mm,
and that they had gone too sort of left liberal, and one had to come back to a more kind of
central,
neutral or
yeah,
even right of center or
mm,
central sort of position. And I think that's happened across most universities in various ways. I mean, persuasion by the government, sometimes more active intervention by university authorities and the government, pressures of one kind or another. So yeah, I think that's happened, but I think because the direct curricular intervention of governments is less evident in universities, it's been slower than at the school level.
So okay, let's school level. I think I'm taking Singapore out of this context here, Prof. I'm talking globally on impact level. Governments should not necessarily be involved in education. I mean, of course, you get funding, you get grants, and all that kind of stuff. I understand that part of it, but I just feel like the government should not touch education. I think that's supposed to be run, be it on a private school level or on a public school level, because you get money from it. I understand that completely. But I feel curriculum level it should be run out equally. My biggest concern, Prof, is that the fact that in today's world we're trying to micromanage education so that you build a different kind of human capital than we had before. And that's my concern, Prof. What are your thoughts on where we are today in
First
that
of all,
spec?
I don't kind of agree with you that the
Mm,
government shouldn't be education at all. I mean,
mm,
certainly in a developing country, it's a public good, and the private sector will not necessarily pick up, the entire
mm-hmm,
education sort of opportunity for various reasons, commercial and other reasons. So the government has to be involved. And I think uh, my bottom line would be let's have a mix. Let's
mm,
not go too far one way or the other, completely privatized or completely run by the government. And particularly, I think, for India, but for most countries, some mix is appropriate. The mix is also appropriate because, I mean, the government does need to, up to a point, regulate fees so that it's available for, widely available for people who are disadvantaged. It may have to ensure that there's non-discriminatory, admissions as well, so that there's a mix of students, a diversity of students,
mm.
so that the gap between people who are very advantaged and less advantaged, doesn't get beyond a point. So I think there's a role for government regulation of various aspects of university life, in the broader sense, education, not just the curriculum, is also appropriate,
But
but
it's
balance has to be struck.
yeah, but
I would
Prof, but
say,
is access actually true
I
though,
agree.
Prof?
I mean, those who want to go to a government-regulated public university, go ahead. Those who don't, there ought to be private universities available to them. So I would say I'm more for a mix in any society than, just one or the other. And I would say at the school level as well.
Hmm. Because I feel like the access to education is extremely important for all of us, right? I really believe that in the core of any society. But I just feel like access is granted to those who have and those who don't. And then your level of education is a bit different from most people, right? And depends on the access that you are granted or allowed to have. And I think I mean, be it in India or be it in any country in the world, I still believe that if I'm an ACS boy, right? Straightforward. So my path is a bit different versus say I'm from Chan Chung Sing Primary School or whatever. Like, it's a very different thing altogether. My path is a different path versus. But do you think that can ever, at one point, I think Singapore's a bit regulated, so it's fine. We can have certain systems. But in other parts of the world, you pay to play. I feel education is a pay to play model. In India, you got 10,000, maybe hundreds of thousands private universities. You got it's it's a it's a financial model more than it is actually an education model because it's not regulated at most points, right? But what do you think that so? Probably this is my personal beef, but this is what I'm saying that you got all these talented young kids in India and without the access. And there are people with access. So how do you bridge that gap, though, Prof?
Well, that's what I say. I mean, I think a nice mix of state impacted, regulated,
Yeah, but
supported institutions and others. And by the way, the private offerings in India as well as
mm,
elsewhere, it's a huge range. I
mm,
mean, there are private level schools, just to take the Indian example again, which are little holes in the wall. They're worse than a lot of state-sponsored schools.
yeah,
They're literally 2 rooms and 4 teachers. And then there are the super duper private, schools in India with massive infrastructure, buildings, a huge teaching staff, very modern with all the amenities. Likewise, the universities. There are little colleges teaching one or two things, engineering or
yeah.
whatever, and then there are all-purpose public and private universities teaching everything. But the private university structure itself is massive. I'm teaching now at a place called Ashoka University, where the fees are kind of market level fees. They're very, very high. And then there are tiny little private colleges where you might be paying almost a pittance to be
Mm,
educated in a small third, fourth tier town. So, even this idea of the private sector in India, private education at the school and university level is a huge range. Likewise, I think public universities too. There are public universities that are massive, all purpose, and then there are much more humble public institutions. And I
mm,
think that's probably true in many parts of the world, although the range may be narrower in advanced economies, where there's a baseline level of facilities and amenities and teaching. And But in India, certainly the range is very great. And I would suspect in much of the global south,
mm,
the range in both private and public education from the lowest and smallest to the biggest and most advanced would be enormous.
mm. I want to segue this one now we've done this. I just felt like I wanted to speak to you a lot more about education, but I think I want to also focus a bit more on the book that I read that you've written, Prof. And I think it's something not something. It's about to do with India and China and I think today it's a bit more politically driven this conversation, but feel free to let me know if it's a bit out of our range of conversation. Have you think that what I just recently watched the Victory Day parade in China that happened I think a couple of days ago. Do you think with Kim Jong Un and Vladimir Putin and all these guys shaking hands and this biggest autocratic ever get together I've ever seen? Do you think that shift happened and also with Modi shaking hands as well? Have we moved on as us, as the U.S., as the West left us, and India and China moving on to be the new superpower of the world? Prof?
Okay, you've really changed gears on me there,
I did.
but
I moved it very quick because I only got
um,
Because I want to move on from education because I had this education talk yesterday with the principal of World Skills Center in Odisha last week. So I
Okay.
want to move to you because, Prof, you got a bigger sense of the world. I want to know what the young people are going to learn about things. So, mm,
Well, I think the meeting in China, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, I mean, clearly it had a number of countries, all the member countries, about 15 or 20 of them now. But the main players, as you point out, were China, Russia, India, Pakistan, and a few others, but mostly the big three, China, India, and Russia. And as you know, Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, this was his first trip to China in 7 years.
correct, yeah.
So significant, at least for that reason, of course, for other reasons as well. And clearly, you saw the bonhomie and the hand holding and so on between the big three very prominently on display, very well choreographed by them, essentially sending a message to
Yeah,
Washington
the West, yeah.
about their kind of pushback or autonomy vis-a-vis the United States. And all three have various levels of tension and conflict with Washington. So this was a coming together. I mean, you have other countries there who also have their concerns about Washington, most primarily amongst those is Iran. Um, and the second thing I think which you noted was since it was held in Beijing, and since Xi Jinping turned it into also a showcase
Mm,
of Chinese military power, national power, with the parade and so on. And also, thirdly, his very pointed remarks about a reinterpretation of China's role in World War II, which personally I'm in sympathy with. Uh, the West, for the West, the World War really begins in 1939 with Nazi Germany invading
yep,
Czechoslovakia, Poland,
yep.
and later France. But it's very clear that for Asia, particularly for China, uh, the Japanese invasion of the Chinese mainland, at least in 1937, you could probably stretch it back a little earlier,
Mm,
is a huge event. And China too paid an enormous price, fighting the Japanese, of course, fighting each other as well, the Kuomintang against the Chinese Communist Party. But I think Xi Jinping underlined the point that it played an enormous role. And I think all three countries actually contributed
yep,
massively to the Second World War.
yep.
Indian troops fought under the
Mm,
British, but also under Subhash Bose with
mm,
the Japanese on both sides. Um, Much larger numbers, of course, in the British Indian Army. The Russians, of course, had a profound effect on the termination of the war in Europe,
yep.
particularly,
Mm,
and are often not given enough credit for the role they played in the enormous
no,
losses they
yep.
took, both
Mm,
military and civilian. So you have three countries who have a slightly different version of the World War. But all in all, I think they showcased their sort of unity against Washington, basically telling Washington, we have other geopolitical choices. You're not the only country that we look to. We have each other, and we can have a bit of a united front here and
yep.
work out arrangements on trade and security between us. Second, as I said, it was a showcase definitely for China, and China as the primus inter pares, the first
Mm,
amongst equals of these 18 or 20 countries that came together for the summit. And thirdly, I think that it's quite important this kind of historical revisionism of the Second World War, where Asians and Russia, played a much bigger role than is generally given credit, even by Asians. I think many Asians
mm,
tend to think of the Second World War as that war in Europe, and then there was something going on with the Japanese. But China's role, the Indian role in it, and even to some extent the Russian role was kind of downplayed and sort of vanishes. So I
exactly.
think China was at quite a. All three were made a point about that as well. China the most, of course.
But, Prof, you think that this isolates? I mean, I don't know if Donald Trump's game is to isolate himself, I say the U.S. away from international relations. But what I do believe in the fact that he's uniting things that we felt was wrong 4 or 5 years ago. They're uniting the wrong ideology together. Do you think? and this is going to go back again to education and to kids and to whatever we were talking about earlier prior to this. I brought this up purely for this. You know, the ideology that if you're being brash, you're being rude, you're being out there, blah blah, whatever the system of how things are supposed to be. But do you think uniting all these guys together and thinking that they are succeeding is slightly more important than the fact that you know what our normal social norms are supposed to be normal?
Well, I'm not sure he's quite united them yet. I mean,
No,
this
he's
was the
done it pretty
first.
well, though, Prof. To be honest, honestly, he's done it pretty
Let's
well.
see. I'm a bit skeptical. I remain a bit skeptical. I mean, the kind of understandings these three have, they're quite dispensable. They could all change their minds fairly quickly. I
Hmm.
mean, tomorrow, if the Russians or the Chinese strike a deal with Trump or even India, they could all roll back this Russia, India, China kind of triangle fairly quickly. May fall apart. So I think, one has to be a bit cautious. Of course, I mean, Trump with his shenanigans and his peculiar ways has certainly brought them closer than they were. But again, I mean, I looked at the headlines this morning. One day he's insulting Mr. Modi in India, and this morning he said, "Oh no, I love Mr. Modi. He's a great guy, and I'm sure we'll work something out with India, even though India's kind of somewhat lost its way for now." And so on Monday he says one thing, on Tuesday he says another, on Wednesday a third. And I think certainly speaking for India, but I'm sure China and Russia as well. They've got back channels going with various agencies, people, and groups in in the United States, such that they haven't given up on a different kind of relationship with Trump and the new America, and he hasn't given up either. There's a lot of public grandstanding and beating up of these three, but there's also more pragmatic back channel kind of diplomacy going on. So I think we've got to wait and watch. The United States is not going to walk away from these three powers altogether. And these three powers cannot, there Trump is right, they cannot walk away from the American market and the relationship with the most powerful country in the world. They have to find a way as well to live and work with the Americans.
Well, the, the
Um,
the definition of the most powerful country in the world, I think, is softly shifting. To be honest, I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
moving
I
towards the
think the
east.
jury's out. I think
Yeah.
the jury's out on that as well. China has certainly made huge
Mhm.
strides and is catching up, but China has its own limitations in various ways, and it's not quite there yet. Its GDP is not there in nominal terms.
Yeah.
Its military tech is getting there very quickly, but there's still probably areas where it's deficient. And then, depending on how seriously you take the idea of soft power, the
Hmm.
idea of sort of cultural power and the power of attraction. Probably China's still not quite there. The Americans can still mobilize enormous cultural power, institutional power globally, that allows them to pull countries together.
Hmm.
Now, at the moment, they're not choosing to do much of that, but they can dial back the switch the other way. So I think there's still a way to go for China. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely say it's a bipolar world, with China as the second power, and in some ways, in certain arenas, more powerful than the Americans.
Hmm.
Certainly in Asia, its power is enormous. And in some areas of technology, it's probably leading the United States pretty clearly now.
Yeah, I think they really are. I think they're way beyond and above because of not my own personal biases, but I'm just saying that I believe the East is kind of taking over the West in certain things. But Prof, question. Now I want to get back into what we first were discussing. You know, the rise of these leaders that we see globally. Does it have an impact on the youth or the kids growing up today to think that this succeeds with this personality, with this kind of rhetoric, this kind of how I portray myself, uh, really matters, Prof? Because I see the rise of it very often in office spaces, right, in the corporate space.
Well,
Yeah,
uh, yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you can see that I mean, these are larger than life figures,
exactly. Yeah.
certainly in their own societies, if not globally. And
Hmm.
if you just look at social media, people commenting on their personal styles and so on all the time, and surely they're having an impact on young minds. Quite what that impact is, I don't know. Some may be turned off by the kind of style of all three or some of the three. Others may be attracted to it. But that image of the leader as being, kind of very statesmanlike, very measured in their tonality, very kind of interactive in a very sober sort of way, with access to them mediated through, kind of the UN or
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
statement,
Hmm.
formal setting, and so on. I mean, social media has just blown that sky high. And so now you're getting very close, sort of proximity almost to what these leaders say minute to minute, with all their exclamation marks and so on when they post. Obviously, Modi and Trump are probably the most accessible. I don't see so many posts by Xi Jinping, although I'm not on Chinese social media, so
Exactly. There's
I
a
don't know.
Weibo and all that. It's a whole different story. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise, I don't think Putin is out there as much. But,
Mm.
I mean, leaders are having a very direct relationship now with young people in a way they never had before. And some of them, from time to time, even, even field, field questions directly from young people via the tweets and
Oh,
so on.
let
So
alone young people. They would just field questions from journalists as well. But
yeah,
journalists,
well, of course, it's
yeah,
old tradition. But you were asking about young people. So I
yeah.
think, yeah, I think the one big impact is, and it's not just the leaders, but it's that on social media particularly, it's very short, punchy, opinionated, strong views that get across. If you have too many if, buts, maybes, you qualify stuff too much, it doesn't communicate, it doesn't attract followers. And so, yeah, if there's a general style that the tweets and social media of these leaders have communicated and that have in turn impacted the way that these leaders express themselves, because the technology is forcing them to express themselves in a certain very succinct and often provocative way. Well, I mean, I think, you can see that in the social media. I mean, I teach in the classroom. I'm
Mm.
very aware that if I have too many qualifications and overly nuancing everything, students begin to drift away. They begin to lose interest.
But is
They
that a
want
concern, Prof? Isn't that not a concern? Like,
It is a concern. It is a
yeah,
concern. I mean, in some ways, it's a good thing because you have to really think hard about what you want to communicate crisply. On the other hand, nuancing things, which you also want to do as an expert in a domain, you may begin to cut back on that, thinking, "Gosh, I don't have the time. These guys have a limited attention
attention
span."
span. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So there is, I mean, leaders have played a role in that, but they've also been shaped by the technology as well. So, I wouldn't hold them completely responsible for this kind of cultural shift in dialogue, communication, and sort of self-presentation, the sort of
Yeah.
public performance.
Yeah, but I find it baffling, Prof, to be honest. If someone can't read an article for more than 2 minutes, or rather gets a news. I asked a question as a very successful person in a government ministry in Singapore. So where do you get your news from? I got it from Instagram. I said, Instagram for 34 seconds. That's a video he was trying to show me. And I said, mate, you're out of your mind. That's what I told him. Then why don't you go and read this and then get me a proper back channel or get backstory behind it before you promote. I mean, but the rationale behind it, like I said, I just find that also very concerning. I just feel like they've flooded the entire zone with nonsense, and I do believe that. At the bottom of my heart, I do. Like I feel like I'm watching the news. Watch me read the news. I feel like I'm making my own opinions about the news, and it's very scary, Prof. It's really very scary when we don't know what is real and what is not real anymore, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, to
yeah,
use the language of communication theory or physics or whatever it is,
mm,
the signal to noise ratio has really worsened. So the
exactly.
signal is being overtaken by the noise, and we can't figure out, what the signal is because
Hmm.
it's being perturbed and, as you say, saturated by the noise. And, in the French theorist, a man called Baudrillard,
But
had
yeah,
this idea many years ago of the hyperreal. And what he was pointing to in the late 70s, early 80s was that media and communication has exploded to the point where it's hard to discern, what is performance and what is real.
exactly.
Uh,
But
and
the master of it was our good friend, Donald Trump. I think he created the stage where anything goes. And I think
I
I've
mean,
seen
he
kids,
normalized it. You
yeah,
could say he
yeah,
normalized it. I mean, he learned from it very quickly. He's mastered it himself, and he's been very effective as a result. But I mean, so I guess have others, but he's the one that we talk about the most, and he's got the largest sort of
Audience.
visual
Very,
and oral audience.
Mhm. All right, cool. Prof, I'm gonna cut this at the first half. I'm gonna jump to the second half after this. Yeah, just stay with me on this one. 2 minutes break. I'm gonna get a glass of water and blah. All right,
All right.
I'll send you a link after this.
Okay. All
All right,
right.
thanks, Prof.
Yeah. All right. See you in a while.
Like this video? Don't just watch. Like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube. And while you're at it, join us on Substack as well.
Okay.
Better?
All set.
Mm.
I can't hear you.
Can't hear.
I think it's going to take a second for my speaker to kick in again. So if you can just keep talking, please.
Yeah, I will.
just
I will, Prof. Don't worry.
this
As long as
man's
you can,
speaker
I'll
is
keep
being
talking.
useless.
It sounds like my girlfriend I'm dating right now. I keep
I mean,
talking.
they're
She's
really
not listening.
expensive speakers, but they don't seem to interface with my Apple very well.
Yeah.
Could you just say something, please?
Yeah, I will. I will, Prof. I'm here. I'm present.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
All
Okay.
right. Perfect.
All right.
Okay. Cool. It takes a while. It's okay. And Prof. Just to carry on to where we are. I wanted to. We just ended up with Donald Trump and our previous convo. I just feel like it's you told me about the attention span, the audience, and whatever that he can comment or whatever he has, and plus the fact that the younger generation, the generation before mine, uh, they are so much attuned to the fact that they always are good with that 30 seconds, 1 minute, or the 1 minute, 30 seconds, whatever, their video attention span. But do you think that adversely affects how these kids grow up today and how they kind of apply themselves to work as well?
All the evidence seems to suggest that that's the case. I mean, their attention spans are lower. They perhaps a rush to judgment. They may be affected mentally also in the sense that they're not used to reading. They become far more oral and visual. So the patience that you need to read from left to right and from up to down, that takes a bit of an effort. And your eyes and your cognitive faculty have to be engaged in a certain way. But if you're increasingly just going by the visual image and sound, I think you're weakening that prior process of reading. And so I think this is what's happening essentially is that their reading skills are reducing. And from reading comes depth, a more critical appreciation, nuancing, like we said before. So inevitably, I think there's been some diminution of that. Of course, they've gained something as well. So some students are very, very sharp and can do both. But and I think the jury's out on whether the visual and the oral has kind of lifted the bottom at least. There's a lot of people getting a lot of information fairly passively. I mean, that may have had its own educational impacts, and some of it may be positive. It's kind of a democratization of learning and knowledge. But at the upper end, whether, the more sophisticated elements of learning, whether they're being diminished, I think there's now evidence that that may be the case. Quite apart from all the sort of psychological tensions of
Yeah, yeah,
not interacting with human beings, just looking at your phone or the screen, and forgetting that meta education, which is a social education, how to be with other people, how to talk to them, how to listen to them, listening as a skill, in an interactive way, not in a passive way where you just listen to someone online and that's fine, but interacting with someone and listening, truly listening. I think those are things that are diminishing. So that's the very great worry, I think, that's growing, is that you're getting people who are more solipsistic, inward, concerned with the
correct.
self and
Yeah,
not able to
yeah.
communicate outwards, and be with others. And that's a worry. And so what kind of society will that be then? And then further development of AI, where there is interaction.
I was about to go there as well. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a great AI user and have no
yeah,
very original, profound thoughts there, but clearly, hallucinations, that is made up information,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
uh, very kind of pablum-like, on the one hand, on the other hand, kind of education that you get from AI. But then, of course, sometimes uh, the very sinister messaging almost of AI, recent suicide
Correct. Mm-hmm.
that have been in which AI has been implicated and so on, where it becomes your sort of clinical therapist and advisor,
Mm-hmm.
life advisor. I mean, who knows where that's going. So I think there are all those worries. But again, I don't have any very original thoughts there, but the
Yeah.
general trend is worry, which is that we may be increasingly locked in with our screen and ourselves with no ability to engage in real meaningful
Mm.
conversation with others, and what that will do to social arrangements and
But but
democracy, which
but do you think?
requires interaction.
But Prof, I don't know. I see it's a dual prong thing. I always find it a dual prong thing. I see, like Prof, you and I met in person. We didn't have a tool that we could use to connect, and we laughed over a glass of whiskey and at Chimes, and I think that kind of relationships, and we've been friends for a few years now. But what I'm trying to get is the fact that do you think socially as a society these kids are losing all this, and they're not um being able, the soft skills are one thing, the hard skills are something you can learn. I always say anytime, any day. It's the soft skills of managing people, leading people, talking to people is something that I think we have lost completely. Do you think today's generation will ever go through this and knowing the fact that you can still succeed if you're being an absolute asshole? You know what I mean? It's because you can be an asshole behind a computer and no one really cares. But you can still succeed and you make money. So I'm trying to see whether the soft skills still matter today for the kids who are growing up, or does it the you know is it something that is advocated via a teaching body or no? Oh,
The short answer is I don't know. I mean, I think someone who's deeply in around people of that age in a managerial office setting probably better. In my setting as a professor, it's still a bit old-fashioned. I'm
yeah.
still the authority figure. They have to sit there
Mm,
silently, more or less, in the sense of while I'm lecturing. Of course, we have an interactive component as well, but it's not quite the same, I think, as an office space or a bureaucratic space um, where the people have to combine far more.
mm,
The classroom space has never been quite that. There is collaboration when you're doing group activity or
yeah, yeah.
or and
But how
there's
do
a
these
discussion.
kids date nowadays, Prof? Do they go on dates?
I'm sure they do. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm new to this new private university, but at NUS, I could certainly see it.
yeah,
Um, they date, but I mean, of course, a lot of dating is happening through social media type dating sites,
yeah,
Tinder
uh,
and all of that.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm told that's a very different experience. But more and more people are meeting their significant others there,
But I appreciate
whereas
that.
that used to be at work or it used to
Yeah,
be at university,
exactly. Yeah,
and it's expanded the range of choice in a way, and even geography. I mean, there are people who meet each other in different countries or different parts of the country and
yeah.
then get together. So I guess the norms and sort of changed there, and but it still seems to be happening. I mean, I
Hmm.
still have a sense that human beings will take the machine in stride and still find a way to connect to each other and hold the machine in check.
Yeah.
And we're not quite in a sort of
Mm.
matrix world where we're just all wired into some remote, bizarre machine, and there is
Yeah,
no reality.
but I really feel we're getting there, Prof. Honestly, I believe we're getting there. I was with AI Singapore, under the PMO office in Singapore. I was with AI Singapore, the body, and we recently had a chat about how fast we're moving in things that Singapore wants to be a leader or a champion in artificial intelligence, right? And it's one of the things that I keep saying. Then they said that we get to get our kids as young as 6, 7, 8, 9 to be attuned to artificial intelligence. So uh, I found that a bit off script to me. You know, and
Well, I mean,
I want
I
to hear
still
your
have,
thoughts on that one. Yeah.
yeah, I still have faith that there's a biological need to be with others, obviously.
Hmm.
There's a social need. We're so hardwired social, in our brains to be social.
Hmm.
Uh, I think that still gives me faith that people, no matter how long they spend in front of their computers and so on, they're going to seek each other out. They're going to talk to each other. They're going to be physically around each other. And a lot of the messaging that happens when we don't even speak and so on will continue to happen. So that's almost a biological, social kind of imperative in us, which I'm not sure that the machine can short circuit and stop.
But I guess
Uh,
machine learning is the future, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you mean that machine learning will increasingly play a role in learning, but we're still going to turn to other human beings to learn and to make sense of things. And it's more efficient. I can have a conversation with you and learn something sometimes much faster than I can typing out something or even speaking to a machine and then having it process it and come back
Yeah,
with,
yeah, yeah.
a bunch of things. I mean, I still find uh, better to pick up the phone and or walk across to someone's office and get something clarified than move through email and WhatsApp and all of that. So I think, but at a higher level too, I can transact more learning in 90 minutes in a classroom, I think, than someone sitting in their office just, going and looking asynchronously at a taped class
Mm.
and doing the assignment can do. Um, so I still have hope,
Yeah.
that
'Cause I
the
feel that
present progress is important.
yeah, I feel the narrative is being pushed quite often that you have to be a young learner or adult learner, regardless of which spectrum you are. I believe the narrative is being pushed pretty much, Prof. Like you have to be, you know, if you're unemployed at 50, you got to go and do your AI skills course, or if you're a young grad who right now who's Singapore is facing this problem of youth unemployment, and it's quite prevalent to be honest. And for them, is that what government is trying to roll out a lot of incentives, and I get that part, but I'm also trying to figure out like, why are we having this huge disparity of employment? And the only thing they keep saying you got to be in touch with the times. So the time for the old people is you got to go into digital transformation. You have to be an AI proponent. The young kids who are pretty much, I think they're very digitally native, to be honest, and they probably know a lot, and they're still not getting hired. And then what do you think that disparity is, Prof?
Well, I mean, I think it's a generational disparity for sure, at least.
Hmm.
And I guess older people like me, we will gradually we'll learn a few tricks, but we'll never be at the level of younger people, and we will gradually exit the employment stage.
As an economist, I find that they both problems have the same end result. Like both can't find jobs, and the
Yeah.
both solutions they're trying to put off is the same thing. I mean, it's kind
Yeah,
of
younger people, you're right. They may not find jobs because they're being displaced by technology much faster than probably older people in a way. But I mean, that's a danger. I don't know. There's one view that when you create new technologies, you don't really lose jobs, but you change jobs. So people, when the internet came along and email and computers, yeah, people lost certain kinds of jobs, but then they retrained and they moved in to other jobs aided by the technology. And uh, I think there are two views on whether AI will have that kind of displaced but redirect impact, or whether you'll simply be displaced and be good for nothing. I don't know. I think that's for economists and people who are out there in the field to really know. In education at the moment, we're the most protected probably from that, because there still seems to be, a faith and an accent on the
mm,
human being interacting with other human beings in the classroom and so on to do research and teaching. So we seem to be a bit inoculated or protected against that displacement.
mm,
But lawyers, chartered accountants, those kinds of service providers may be already feeling the
yeah,
pinch. But I think education and people in the arts and letters probably still more insulated. People who in the care industry, especially psychological care, might be more insulated from it. But even in the in doctoring and nursing,
Mm,
um, but some areas, of course, are going to feel the pinch far more. As I said, lawyers, engineers, coders.
mm,
A few just 2 years ago, it was, oh, everyone should be a coder, and now people say forget coding, learn mathematics, learn
yeah.
physics, because AI is going to do most of the coding. Um, so I'm worried for those kinds of people. But I think we in the education sphere and in caregiving in the arts and letters, we're still in much better shape,
Yeah. So the
with the
kids, the
technology.
kids nowadays who are in uni. So I mean, I'm sure AI may be a subject that they study anyway. Is there a module? I'm guessing. I'm guessing there should be a module, right? But so when they come out to the market space, I'm sure they're probably a lot more better equipped. And also, Prof, can I ask you another question? Is one thing is, are they writing their papers with AI or with Chat GPT
Yeah,
or?
for sure.
I thought as
Even
much.
faculty are
Yeah.
using AI to write
Yeah.
papers, but in a probably more often than not properly.
Mm,
Students are, definitely using and often misusing AI.
mm,
Some because they still don't quite understand where the line is,
yeah.
but
Exactly.
some very clearly understand it and misuse it. And I think more and more faculty are moving towards good old-fashioned writing tests and exams with by hand in a classroom setting in a finite amount of time,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like we used to do tests and exams. So I know I'm doing that already.
Yeah.
I've given up on term papers and so on. And maybe at the PhD level, I'd still do that. But at the undergrad or even master's level, you're taking a huge risk if you commission term papers and
Yeah.
written assignments that are done at home on a
Mm-hmm.
computer and so on.
I just to
So
let you, just like
it's a
on a person,
crisis.
yeah, on a personal level, that you know that actually I'm applied for my PhD as well right now.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
great.
I'm waiting for it so I can write my AI papers and all that. So I mean
Right,
my Chat GPT papers. I'm getting
right.
accepted, but I'm doing it at Seoul SNU, Seoul National University.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm doing it over there. So that's the other part.
Okay.
I applied for that anyway. Let's see what happens. So it's the next one. I think the last final one, Prof, is just basically I wanted to personally just say I I I I really thank you for not just being a really good friend, but also joining us on this 84 musing journey and all that kind of stuff. And I'm really hoping that you have the time to just I'm sure a lot of us are waiting for an article from you or something you can write.
Yeah.
And everyone is so excited that I'm doing this with you today. Even Angie sent me a little message because finally you tracked Prof down. I say Prof and I always speak. He says that he's busy transiting between Singapore and India. And I think it's just something that I don't know, I'm excited about. No, I say I care. I love you a lot. I always say that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just that one thing that I say I want that Prof doesn't exist. I say he exists, he just doesn't have time. So and
Yeah.
so it's just one of those things that I'm very good blessed that you managed to spend an hour of your time with me anyway today.
Thank you
And
very much for doing this. It's been fun, and I've learned a lot just by trying to think through your questions and your
I know
provocation.
I actually had a whole
Coming
list
out
of
my own ideas. So
I had a
yeah,
whole list of questions beside me, but I just thought I didn't want to make it too, because I want to
yeah,
speak to you a lot about politics, but I think it's a bit of a sensitive topic for a lot of us.
it is.
So,
Yeah.
and I think we discussed this earlier. So let's keep it to what I think is it's worth
That was
speaking
good.
about.
And then I deal with politics all the time, so it's
Yeah, I
nice to
know.
me from that and
Yeah,
and
exactly.
make me think a bit more about stuff that I don't normally
Yeah,
encounter. But it's been great, and look forward to seeing you in the flesh in
we
Delhi.
will for
And
sure, Prof. Prof, I'm going to
yeah,
give you the last 5 minutes of the floor. I've
yeah.
got a couple of quick. I always do a quick fire with a lot of my guests that I have on. And Prof,
I'm
since
useless at that.
no,
I'm
no,
the
no, you have
most
to, you have to.
spontaneous. I'm the most
No, no, no.
unspontaneous person in the
The
world.
questions are super simple. Super simple, okay?
Okay, I'll
They're
try.
not they're not
I'll
long-winded.
try.
All right? Prof, first question. If you had a song that could summarize your life, what would it be?
Oh, you see, you've got me there right
See,
away.
it's very simple questions, like one
I
song.
think Imagine by John Lennon.
Oh, imagine all the people. Yeah, beautiful song. Prof, next question. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or living, who would you choose?
I think, oh gosh, there's so many names running through my head.
Mm.
Hmm, probably a philosopher. Um,
Name?
you know, I don't know. I think, he's an old-fashioned name, and people have taken pot shots at him for all kinds of reasons, but maybe Bertrand Russell, because he
Bertrand
could
Russell. Really?
he could span so many different philosophical streams, normative, analytical, and he had his legs firmly planted on the ground. He cared about world issues.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Okay. I, last one, Prof. You've traveled the world. You've seen a lot of things. Prof, your favorite food, if you are stuck anywhere in the world, what dish would you love to eat, Prof?
Yeah, pizza.
Pizza.
I
Like
was
what type of pizza?
I was conceived in Italy, and I've got pasta and pizza in my blood. So,
Name, you gotta name a dish though, Prof. You gotta name it. Is it
oh,
like a
oh, a particular dish.
hmm
Then probably, I don't know, maybe just, lentils and rotis, dal
See,
and
that's what I would have said as well. I was just indulging,
yeah,
but I would have gone with that. So no
yeah.
no pasta and pizza, yeah?
Okay. I mean,
All right.
yeah,
Okay, fine. So we got dal roti for the last one.
yeah.
Prof, I'm gonna have a next podcast with a next person. I don't know who it's gonna be, but if you have one question you wanna ask them, what would you ask, Prof?
One question, I would say, um, hmm, gosh, I think ask the person, what is the biggest moral challenge today?
That's a great question. It's $1 million question. All right,
Yeah.
I love that. Hey, Prof, that's the end of the quick fire. It's not that hard, Prof. I keep telling you, we think it's tough. Is this?
It's hard.
No,
I'm
it's
just
very
not.
simple. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I always
Well,
like,
thanks for those
yeah, I always
as
like
well.
to do this when I end it, so it ends on a high.
Yeah.
And Prof, any
Yeah.
last message you want to tell anyone that's listening to this that you want to share? Maybe a
No, I just had a fabulous 14 years in Singapore, and I wish Singapore tremendously well in
yeah.
everything, all its people. And so that's my message. Majula Singapore.
Oh, thank you, Paul. You're the best person ever. Anyway, Prof, I want to say thank you on behalf of 84 Music. And Prof, I need to start writing an article for us, yeah, at some point.
For sure.
For
Yeah.
sure. All right. All right, Prof,
Yeah.
thank you. And I tell you what, to everyone watching this podcast, it's been a pleasure, honestly. And thank you. I'll leave Professor's details in the his WhatsApp, sorry, not WhatsApp, his website address in the details below. And Prof, once again, it's been a pleasure, honestly. And I'll give you a call very soon.
Thanks so much. Look forward to it. All the
All right.
best.
Thanks, Prof. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.